So, good
Hello.
evening. Good evening, Jasmine. How's it going?
It's going great. Thanks, Gump. How about you?
Yeah, I feel perfectly fine. I've just had dinner, so I'm
You had a pizza,
ready.
didn't you?
I did. I had pizza and garlic bread. So,
Ooh.
ready. I'm ready for this show because this show is going to be special. So, welcome to our PhoenixUK, presented by Blue, because, you know, we love doing extra shows and all in aid of doing a few podcasts and talking about esports on a regular basis. So make sure you catch our previous 2 episodes that are currently on the various podcast networks, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and you name it, it's there. It's on everywhere. Tonight we are going to talk to Tom Pickering, who's going to be talking to us about a bit of casting, because we thought we'd go for a little bit more of an intimate subject this time. You know, a lot of people sort of know the kind of ins and outs of casting. They know the glamorous side of casting, going to events, you know, being shipped around to every part of the world and getting paid quite highly in the commentating market. But not everyone seems to know how much hard work and effort and blood and sweat is all in that. The stereotypes you have to break within the industry, the late payments that happen in the industry, and also, you know, all the other sort of downsides that we don't see on a regular basis from the casters. So before we go to our guest, I think Jasmine should read out the giveaway that Blue are actually doing tonight.
Yeah, so you guys, you wonderful people listening in on various podcasts or watching at home, you can be in with a chance of winning a Blue Microphone Yeti Caster Bundle. The wonderful people from Blue have given you guys a chance to win that, so please do make sure you enter. Obviously, we are using Blue microphones, and I cannot rave enough about these mics. You know, people always used to complain that I was way too quiet. It's not because I speak quietly, it was actually just my mic before. And as soon as I changed over to a Blue microphone, people were saying stuff like, oh, you actually sound like you're in a studio. So now people have no more excuses of not being able to hear my call outs when we play games. So yeah, I think you can enter at EPIC.LAN.UK/blue.
Wow. I might just do that because, you know, giveaways and me go back a long way, because I don't win anything on giveaways. But I do know someone who does win a lot of stuff on the giveaways. Hey,
yeah, I've heard that one. I've heard that one before, Gump. So many times. Never gets old.
Well, yeah, it doesn't. And it's a kind of a double dose of us as well, because Epic 33 is only 1 week away. So we're very excited by this. So it means that we actually have a double dose of PhoenixUK, which means John is going to love life at the moment with the amount of my voice he's going to have to hear. So next week we'll be talking about Epic 33 as the event starts to open, and we're obviously going to be both in Coventry and at home. Me and Jasmine are going to be at home, but everyone else that's going to be at the event, they're going to be in Coventry enjoying themselves. So, yes. So look forward to that show next week, because I'm sure we'll get some fantastic guests on, I would imagine. So, without further ado, shall we bring on our guest tonight?
Let's.
Hello, Tom.
Hello. Tom, meet Tom. Tom, meet Tom.
Yeah, Tom.
Woo! Where to, Tom?
Yeah. Hello, Tom. How's it going?
Yeah, not bad, you know. Busy as usual, but always good. What about yourselves?
Yeah. I'm doing great. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, not too bad.
I'm excited to get chatting to you, to be quite honest with you. And I like the fact that we've got you on the show, because I know me and you have had this constant chit-chat and debate about esports and how it works and things that could be improved, and you know what we would kind of like to see more of from the industry, like just in our day-to-day chit chat. So I think it would be amazing to give the listeners on the various podcast networks as well as viewers at home the opportunity to kind of learn from your experiences and gain some insight, not only for people that perhaps like, you know, watch esports tournaments and events so they can kind of understand more of a caster's role, but also people who might be wanting to get into the field of casting.
Yeah, sounds good. Got a lot to talk about. Haven't been around as long as some people, but still feels like about 20 years. It's not, but you know, it still feels like it.
Trust me, esports makes you feel like you've been in the scene for 20 years when you've only been in it for about like a year or something like that. It's yeah, it can certainly make you into a granddad quite quickly. I know that from good experience.
So I just want to start off by asking you to kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, like perhaps for people that might not know who you are, a bit of what you do and kind of how you got into the scene and all that good stuff.
What do you mean if people don't know who I am? What are you talking about?
Oh, here comes the ego.
I'm Tommy Pickering. You know. Anyway, let that mean there. So, yeah, Tom Pickering used to go via We Free Men for about 13, 14 years. But last year I switched over to using Tom Pickering as my brand because it's just a lot simpler for me and it's just what I preferred. You know, I tried to make my name something for myself rather than the username. Yeah, so being a fan of like obviously gaming and esports for a long time, mostly pushed more into gaming because I was always restricted access to being able to actually play games and stuff, and had to battle to be able to get internet connection by taking over the network at home. And I kind of just pushed my love and drive to look into esports, and then be able to turn around to one day to my dad and say, I'm working in esports, like in gaming, and I'm actually earning money. I managed to actually, you know, make it on that front. So yeah, I do part-time commentary. I don't do it full-time, which is sort of by choice. But I work obviously within esports from a business and advisory perspective as well.
Good stuff. So what are some of the games that you've worked on previously and you have experience casting and whatnot?
So I have a main sort of field on that front. CSGO is my home battlefield from a long time ago. Played it since about 2001 as a little kid. Always loved it in sort of the 1.5, 1.6 days. And then more recent years, since about 2017, I moved into more battle royales because it was a bit of an opening to try and make a name for yourself on that front. Did fairly well, worked heavily within the scene on that front, within PUBG for the main part, and then sort of slowly moved away from that into a few other bits in the last sort of 2 years, as I sort of disagreed with the way they were doing some stuff. But I've casted Free Fire and a bunch of other games, but Free Fire, PUBG, and CSGO are the main things I love. Don't really cast things I don't enjoy.
All right, good stuff. So how did you start your whole casting career? At what point did you kind of start and decide, you know what, this is the way I want to do things, this is the way to get into the scene?
I think it was back in 2014. I was playing a lot of CSGO, and it was I was fairly good, and I sort of went through and looked at all the potential like UK professional players at that time who were actually earning like a half decent salary, and then sort of calculated in a very rough estimate of like what the actual chances of me being a UK professional CSGO player was, and I was like, never mind, won't bother doing that right now. And then someone turned to me and said to me whilst I was playing a game of CSGO on Dust 2 in like I think December or something, they're like, oh, do you do commentary? You have a good voice. I'm like, no, but good idea. So I kind of took it from then. Took about like 8 months to work out like how the hell do I get into commentary, because I had no experience in any form of like any kind of like voice acting, commentary, like production of any kinds really. Apart from, I that's a lie. I hosted a internet radio for like 2 years, like pirate radio for like 2 years or something for a while. And so it took about 8 years to sort of kind of realize that no one was there to like offer a hand up or like do anything for anyone trying to get into casting. So I created a mini sort of organization off the back of some scrim games we were doing from the old school Facebook UK CSGO group.
All right, Gump, I feel like I'm taking over this segment. I'm going to let you ask something.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask about sort of more the downsides to casting, because I think this is an area that doesn't get explored as much as it should do, and I know from experience with talking to other people, especially some of the EPIC.LAN casters who have dealt with the industry on a regular basis, that there are a lot of downsides that people don't tend to hear about. And from a casting perspective, the one thing that I think I want to ask is, did you ever encounter any tournament organizer or any event organizer who sort of turned you down on the basis of anything to do with your body or your looks or anything like that? Because I know it's something that has happened to some people in the industry, where you've got people out there who are not exactly, I don't know what's the nice way of saying it, but fit for the camera, I suppose. And did you ever encounter that kind of thing? Did anyone ever tell you you need to bulk up, go to the gym, or anything like that?
No, I always thought I would, get something, because I've been out of shape for a good 10 years before I even started doing commentary or anything. But no, surprisingly, I've not. I know that I never tend to have a fantastic haircut. I've been tempted to just shave my hair multiple times because I just think it looks shit. Sorry, swore, hey. Don't know if that's allowed or not, but I haven't experienced it myself, but I do know some casting friends and others who have experienced it. I won't give in any details, but I'm sure we're probably talking about the same sort of a couple of people. And I know, ESEA, ESL, and some others have been have had issues with that on people before, and they have told them outright, no, we're not going to work with you unless you do X, Y, Z and change your appearance permanently, or at least semi-permanently, to be able to come on stage. And I was like, I support you if you want to talk about this publicly, because it's just absolutely horrendous to try and turn around to someone and be like, yeah, no, you don't fit our certain cookie cutter look, especially in an industry like, I guess, esports and gaming, which has, at its core been made up of the kind of rejects of society in some form. Yeah.
I feel like, I know, a counter to that though is so I used to work in the visual effects industry. Obviously I've been working in the games industry and stuff like that as well. And I feel like it's a lot more the creative industries, at least, I feel like, are definitely more accepting of you expressing yourself. That might be through, I don't know, have pink hair if you want pink hair, have blue hair if you want blue hair, have as many piercings and tattoos as you want, kind of thing. So when you kind of look at things like that, to me, it's quite surprising that a tournament organizer or a company would not be okay with someone representing and expressing themselves however they want to do that. To me, that's no different than someone choosing to have pink hair and then being told, you know what, you can't work at this company because you have pink hair. It's always the stereotype of when people go to job interviews, for example, and there's a general thing that people kind of say is that a lot of employers won't like to hire people with tattoos. And to me, that's so outdated. To me, that's just that's so bizarre. Why does anyone have a say in how you choose to look and how you choose to represent yourself? I understand if, for example, it was a case of, oh, the way you are dressed right now does not look professional enough. If you're sat in trackies and a big hoodie or whatever, then it might not look professional enough. Sure, I get that standpoint, but to ask someone to change the color of their hair or their piercings or their tattoos or whatever it may be, that to me is a step too far.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's a difficult balance. And like I said, there's been a few people I know who have come through the EPIC.LAN doors and they've struggled with that. And I suppose, coming off the back of our last episode and talking about the mental health within esports, one of the big things that I'm aware of when it comes to talking to casters is you don't want to say you're not fit for the camera. I don't think I could do that to any of the casters I've worked with within at the EPIC.LAN setup, and I've always been complimentary of any of our casters that come through and try and give them as much feedback as I can where possible. But it is certainly one of those stories where you sort of hear about people and they've struggled with that kind of sort of their looks or whatever to try and break into the market. Thankfully, though, Tom, you certainly haven't had that sort of issue to deal with. But it is one of those areas that is kind of concerning when it comes to the industry. As a follow-up question, what are sort of the areas of concern when you've worked within the casting industry? You know, what does, you know, make you step back for a minute and go, well, is that purely acceptable, what we're doing, or anything like that?
There's a lot of gatekeeping. Although, like, obviously on the front side, there's a lot of, yeah, come in, we're going to help you, stand up, step up. And there's always that, like, front side. And I don't think it's always done maliciously. I think in a sense, it comes from like a place of insecurity from a lot of people. I was talking to Jasmine about this the other day, and like the way like I try to, you know, position myself a bit differently, try to not act like others do. And what I mean is sort of, yeah, gatekeeping people from potential opportunities or getting into tournaments. There's loads of stories out there from like the tier 1 talent, not naming names or anything, but they have specifically said to broadcasters, no, I don't want this person on this broadcast or this tournament, or this person is terrible, they've done X, Y, Z, be it true or not. Don't know what would have been exactly said there. And like just hearing that story from like my friends, and I mean, it has happened to me as well before, where I'm just like, okay. And that's what partly made my decision as to why I don't want to do it full time, because it's for me very much going back to like the playground clicky kind of feel, where unless you're ready to kiss ass and, you know, bend over a bit, like you're not really gonna, like, you may not get there unless you happen to be very lucky in a certain circumstance and happen to be talking to a broadcaster and they ignore one of these talents. And the reason for it, like, yeah, is down to insecurity, where they're trying to secure this work. And I don't blame them for it for the most part, because inconsistency in payments and like actually getting gigs can be a massive issue for all talent, even towards the top. Even if they have earned like say 100, 200k that year from doing all major broadcasts, they've still got that insecurity in the back of their head. It's like, oh, if I don't carry on really hard and keep someone from trying to take over my position, I'm going to lose that, and I'm going to have to, I don't know, go and do lesser gigs, or I won't get any work, and I'll have to go, like, I'll have to quit casting or anything. So I think there's always that issue of insecurity in every single caster.
But so, do you think, do tournament organizers actually listen to talent if, for example, they say, I don't like this person, I don't want to cast with them? Is that like do tournament organizers always take the word of like one of the members of talent in that sense? Or is it usually like, will they actually, if someone says, for example, I don't think this person should be casting with me because XYZ, would that tournament organizer actually go up to that person and say, are these claims true?
I don't think in most parts, in most situations, they would confront the situation, because that's just extra work and potential drama, whereas they'll just brush it off and make an excuse for it. Because as far as they're concerned, if they've really got someone nailed down who they consider a really good talent, they're not going to go through the issue of turning to the other person. They're like, yeah, sorry, Bob doesn't actually really like you and has an issue with you and has some insecurities and doesn't want you to be able to be in the spotlight. So we're not going to be able to put you on broadcast this time, and we're going to get their best friend instead, which does happen all the time. I think sometimes, like, it really depends on the broadcaster. It doesn't happen with every broadcaster or anything, but I think it's an easy habit to uphold. And when there's been a lot of people in the tier 1 who've been around for a long time, there is a lot of those relationships within the tournament organizers in which they can then abuse and sort of use that to try and obviously secure themselves a future business, which does make sense. Like, it's their business, it's their livelihood, and they have to do what they feel is best to try and secure their success, which is human nature. To go against that and to give it out, like, try and give out their position to someone else, is going against that nature, I think.
I don't know, though. I feel like I feel like esports and gaming has always been like a big community feel, right? But then when you get into the actual politics of it and, you know, casting scene, hosting scene, you know, even when it comes to being like a manager and things like that, I feel like a lot of it is very political and it becomes less about being a community and being friends with everybody, but more of, like you mentioned, very, very cliquey. And I hate it. I hate the fact that it's so cliquey because I myself have found myself in countless situations where I'm like, I want to make new friends. I want to speak to new people. I want to learn from other people's experiences. I want to improve. But in the back of my mind, I'm constantly like, if I message this member of talent and ask them for feedback or advice or just want to chat to them, they are just going to think, who the hell are you and why are you messaging me? Like, there's this sense of like, they will stay very much within their own circle and be very, very reluctant to kind of branch outside of that. And I'm not sure if it's like, because of what you mentioned, there being that like, I don't know, how would you describe it? Like I don't know, like feeling threatened perhaps, or feeling like you're going to steal their job, even if you just want to have a chat.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about those sort of insecurities about potentially losing out on that position. But I would say when it comes to social media and the general outlook, if you ask them publicly, quite often they will respond positively and help you. I've multiple times I have reached out to people and asked for feedback. They do give it to you sometimes. Often they might just ignore you if they don't know who you are or anything, or if they just don't have time, because obviously they can be very busy and stuff as well, which is completely fair. I think on general, like, there's very much two sides to it. Is that if you're contending with them for a job directly, that's where the threat then comes directly into it. But if you're asking for feedback, they're more likely to be like, yeah, here you go. Especially if it's on social media, because it makes them look good. They may not do it consciously, but that is one of the, I imagine, one of the subconscious reasons as to why they would do it, as well as perhaps it's just what they would want other people to do as well. I don't think need to sort of like vilify all the casters and stuff. I think most of them are pretty good people. I don't know most of them by personally anyway, but I think just from there's two stories to it, I think.
And on that similar topic, you mentioned someone saying, you know what, I don't want to work with this person. I want to get my mate in to cast with me. And more often than not, that is actually what will happen. A member of talent will be dropped, no matter how much potential or how much promise they're showing and commitment to the industry and their craft. But a lot of the time, they will just be dropped. Like, it's nothing for someone's mate to come fill in, right? My question to you, Tom, and also the other Tom, is, in your opinion, do you think that esports is mostly about what you know or who you know?
Go on, Tom, you go first.
No, it's you. You should go first. Sorry, I'll chip in when you've finished.
I think it's a fair sort of, junction between the both, but it's not really a simple answer. But as with most things in life, is that it is about who you know, if and how you position yourself. If you don't work hard to be able to position yourself in a way that people can see that you're good, they know that you've been trying to work hard, then you're never going to be able to get those sort of opportunities unless you're extraordinarily lucky, or you very much know someone who knows someone who knows someone who knows someone. So if you're not positioning yourself correctly, and it's kind of what I try to live by in the sense of like create your own luck. Like, I don't believe in luck as a, it's just like a mystical thing. I think it's something that you actually create for yourself, and you have to position yourself there to be able to, get ready to catch that like bag of gold or whatever, to be able to do it. And sometimes you need to know someone who can tell you where to go to catch that gold, like bag of gold as well. So I think a large part of it is about who you know, but I don't think that's a terrible thing. I think it can just be sucky to be on the other side of it. And sometimes the wrong people do get hired for it, and they are bad at what they do, or at least not up at that level they should be for that tournament. And tournament organizers have suffered because of that before. So yeah.
Yeah, I think there is a definite, it's not what you know, it's who you know in the industry. There is definitely that within the industry, because it's sometimes it's difficult to get that knowledge of where to go when it comes to esports. Esports has completely changed in the 16 years I've been a part of it. To that level, it's gone from people would commentate and cast for fun back in the day, and just do it. If they had the setup able to do it, and if if they had a Source TV or a HLTV kind of relay that could be put up. These days, esports is a lot more glamorous. There's a lot more broadcast rights involved. There is a lot more closed kind of Go TV links. There's, it's very difficult for newcomers to realize, where do we go? Who do we ask? Who do we speak to? If they want to, work with an online league, for example, they don't know who to speak to behind that online league and whatever, and whether that online league has that capability yet. So it is sometimes a who kind of industry for that reason alone, because of how difficult it can be to work your first steps up within esports, and that's something. I think something that esports definitely should improve on, actually, is to sort of have a plan, a plan out there where people can, get the path to being a caster up there. And what you've mentioned about gatekeeping as well, Tom, is kind of an interesting one, because yes, there are gatekeepers, and there will always, unfortunately, be gatekeepers out there. Mostly because, like you say, they're going to be threatened by any new talent. Because what we see and what we have seen is that new talent comes in, they're really, really good. The dynamic is great. If they've got a good casting partner, dynamic's great. They're excitable. And the community then has that hive mind on Reddit, which then, is like, all these two casters should be at every event, blah, blah, blah. So then every event is trying to get them. And then all of a sudden, yes, the old casters that were regularly picking up events are now picking up scraps. So there is that element of gatekeeping, I suppose, that has, for them, has to happen. But sometimes, from my perspective, I'd rather prefer to see the best of the best come out on top of the scene as a thing. And, we live now in an esports demographic where there are different titles that many different casters can go into now and make money out of, just by diversifying their portfolio. And you don't get to see a lot of those like single game casters anymore. There are a lot more people out there who can do many different games, and that does help.
I think that's the important. Go on.
Sorry,
I was going to say I am one of those single game casters that I tend to stick to one game, mostly on one part. Like I just do Free Fire now at the moment, so it's funny that you're saying that. But I completely agree.
But let's be honest, though, Tom. You started with CS. You moved into the battle royales. You've seen that kind of aspect where you kind of have to diversify. You can't be a single game caster, because eventually new talent rises up, old talent getting knocked out, and then you're picking up scraps in that game when you could move to another game, start afresh, and sort of lead the charge for the first few years of that game. And that's a great thing to do. Like, the more games you cover, the better value you have to a big tournament organizer, because let's say someone drops out at a drop of a hat in the run up to a tournament, then you can diversify right there. So I definitely see the benefits of that.
I think,
but there are.
Sorry to interrupt you, but I think also the fact that you don't do casting full time works massively to your benefit. You can focus on just Free Fire, because you're not looking to do every single event ever, right? But then you have casters out there that will literally just focus on making casting full time. Like, I come to think of it, I actually don't know. Are a lot of the casters that we often see on broadcast just doing casting full time, or do they do like day-to-day jobs? I'm not entirely sure. But I think that's probably why it's so important for them to be able to diversify and go into other games. But I think what I find quite strange is, for example, let's say you've got a caster that's really good at Fortnite. To then bring them into CSGO to do casting, that to me blows my mind, because I don't understand. There's no sort of correlation there. You know, they're two completely different games, but it often seems like a lot of tournament organizers will bring that person on board just because of the name or the brand that they kind of have in another game title. And I don't know how it works. I don't know if tournament organizers actually sit there and watch show reels of these casters, perhaps, you know, practicing casting in other games or anything like that. But a lot of the time I feel like it is definitely a mix of who you know and what you know. But I think a lot of the time I see a lot of people that are very, very good with the what you know, but for some reason that it just doesn't click. For some reason it's still like, I don't know if it's gatekeeping. I don't know if it's just, you know, tournament organizers liking seeing a familiar face. I don't know what the reasoning is, but I do think that for up-and-coming casters, it's very difficult to try and break into a pre-existing clique.
Yeah, definitely. And like I think on the most part, it's actually part of a skill set that you have to develop. And I think trying to completely eradicate the like who you need to know is a really bad idea. I think that definitely has to be part of it, because it's a whole prospect of networking is so important, and it's a skill that improves your life just day to day on like just being able to speak to people. And I mean, it's something I learned from my time in like working in recruitment and sort of general business, and you really just have to sort of put yourself out there and not be afraid. And I think naturally, obviously, a lot of people who commentate on these games who are passionate about this aren't always the most social and can be introverts and may not want to or know how to or have the skills to be able to go and do that. And it's something you have to go and learn. And sort of how people learn that is I think probably one of the stumbling blocks for a lot of people from being able to develop themselves, as well as just not knowing what to charge, like who to speak to, how to present themselves forward in a way that can get themselves some more opportunity, and also just being a little bit, you know, strong-headed about it and just going hard at it, not being like, oh, okay, that's fine, maybe I'll speak again next week. It's like, okay, I'll follow up with you next week, and I'll drop you an email and or message on Twitter, and I'll chat with you then. In the meantime, here's my show reel. And just being like really big-headed and strong-willed about it. I think that's definitely something that people in a way have to try and transform towards. And I don't think it's a bad thing, because in a sense, it's a lot of time, it takes a lot of different skills to be able to get to the top. And if you don't have them, sometimes you just don't deserve to be at the top. Even if you're a really good commentator, if you don't have the right social skills, unless someone's going to piggyback, take you on their back all the way up to the top, you may not get there.
Do you know the process that kind of tournament organizers will go through when they're looking to pick up a member of talent by any chance?
Depends on the game and stuff. With Free Fire, they have a list of commentators and stuff. For example, the actual publisher of Garena, in which they'll send to tournament organizers on saying, "Oh, we suggest these." And so I'm on that list. I think you're on that list now, potentially. Yeah, maybe. And then like a few others as well. And then they have got like their sort of one to like whatever. I don't know where I am on that list. And like some other games are different. I mean, obviously, like Valve are very much hands off on a lot of things. They do have their like blacklisted ones. One specific person blacklisted from doing anything to do with Valve again. Can't even, what is his name? Famous guy, whatever. But yeah, so I mean, it really sort of varies as well, just from tournament organizer to tournament organizer. And if someone does do like Counter-Strike commentary for like ESL, they're likely to reach out to those people and ask them, like, oh, do you know anything about PUBG, like PUBG Mobile? And I think, have you ever commentated on that? And they will like go through that process as well with the people they work with to try and extend that and push it out with them, and also trying to use that as leverage to be able to lower the like day rate or whatever for the broadcast.
Okay, so you'd say that a lot of the time, even if you're casting a game that is totally different from, I don't know, whatever game you end up getting picked up for. So, for example, if you're casting like a CSGO or a Fortnite or whatever, that is kind of mostly like tournament organizers will reach out to you because they've seen that you've been good in that different game.
If you got a proven skill set of being a good commentator, analyst, host, whatever, and they ask you, like, oh, do you have any interest in doing this game? Have you got any experience? It will then depend on one, like the quality of the event. If it's like the Pro Series of CSGO and you've got experience in casting PUBG, I doubt they touch you or go anywhere near you if you've not done a decent amount of PUBG. Well, no, sorry, they just won't. Sorry, of CSGO. But if it's the fact that it's a title they're doing and it's like qualifiers and they want to test you out in that as well, then I do know ESL do have that sort of premise where they do reach out to sort of all their other sort of talent they use, which is just smart. It's just they're reaching into their network, as well as they'll reach out to obviously people that they get recommended or they see on other broadcasts. So there's always that sort of filtration process where they'll go through their network and then others. So if you're not already in that network, it is obviously you have to break through that barrier and hope that you actually get there ahead of those already that they know, which, yeah, is just hard to do.
And have you got any advice for people that might be looking to make that jump into whatever game that it might be, in order to kind of take that step and progress a step further?
You need to obviously get a show reel and stuff, but you also need to just record and do demos and review it, get other people to review it, even just like your friends, like Reddit. Well, Reddit at the bottom, they'll quite often just give you the absolute brutal advice, which is actually really good. But you just have to be able to filter it out and realize, like, okay, they're going to be absolute, they're going to like tear me down. That's fine. You just have to, write down some of the key comments they do. It's what I did with CSGO. People were just like, yeah, you've got a really nice voice, but you send us to sleep. Because I just didn't know how to put any energy into like my broadcast at all. So what I then did is within like CSGO, I kept on recording these hype moments and just over and over recording it, re-listening to it, cringing the whole time. And then over time, like built up from that. But when it comes to a new game that you're trying to get into or a current game that you want to advance in, just you have to do a lot of practice on it, get people to review it, send it out to like a bunch of different broadcasters, like a net, and just send it to loads of people and try to get that feedback. And then try and just speak to people and be like, oh, do you know who I'd speak to be able to potentially get some work in X, Y, and Z game? Oh, you don't? Oh, do you know who may know? And if they like don't say that, then fine, move on to someone else and just go around and look through it. Social media is full of like these different people, and there's a bunch of people from ESL and just different tournament organizers. You like Gump, for example, as well, just like going around, if you should find these people and message them or like tweet at them or whatever it may be and just ask, like, do you know anything? It's about asking for opportunities, because if you don't ask, you're not going to get. So it's really about being able to go out there and put yourself out there and having that show reel ready. It doesn't need to be fancy. I think the max limit is like 3 minutes 34 or something. I think is I was told the most optimal time is for one, which is a bit of a strange frame on for it, but I think that's, don't do like a whole like, oh, here's my show reel and it's a 50-minute one. They're going to watch like a couple of bits on it, skip a little bit, and that's it. They won't care. So show yourself at the best and record yourself over a game. And a game like Valorant, where they don't have a demo system unlike CSGO, go and find one of the VODs, record yourself over that, mute the actual VOD. Even if it has not in-game sound, you can still commentate over it very easily, and then use that as your demo instead. There's no excuse to not be able to practice stuff at all.
That's solid advice.
We're going to go for a quick break, if that's okay, guys.
Sure.
Yeah. So for everyone who's tuned in right now, join us after the break. We'll continue playing. We'll continue going over some of the advice that's being given by Tom and some of the more talking points around the mental health aspect of dealing with, comments that, like Tom's already picked out here, some of the comments on Reddit and social media. So we're going to go for a quick break, so stay tuned. We'll be back.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Hope you enjoyed that break.
Yeah, pretty good. Had a quick drink.
I did. Yeah, thanks.
So I'm just gonna jump Not going to tell us what drink?
H2O,
Alright.
your best friend. Make sure to drink it.
H2O. Yeah.
Someone the other day said to me that they were going to go get some H2 Flow, and it sent me. I don't know why. I was laughing for ages. I was like, oh my god, that's brilliant. Throw that one out there.
Thanks, Jasmine.
No worries, Gum. I'll be here all day.
Yeah.
Okay, so during the break, we were kind of briefly speaking about the not so positive side of esports and the things that people don't necessarily touch upon or speak about all the time. And I kind of mentioned to you that I feel like a lot of the time in our industry, particularly, it's a lot of like leeching, and like I feel like it kind of places a lot of people in a situation where they're like, I don't know, is this person just speaking to me because they're thinking it's going to help them like move up the ranks or whatever, or is this person actually wanting to be friends with me because they enjoy my company? Is that like something that happens in casting as well, where you kind of feel like you don't know if people are actually friends with you for you, or if it's because they want access to your network and if they want to make contacts through you?
100%. Like you'd have to be stupid like not to kind of get that, and I know you do. But like it's very much apparent in the sense, and I think it's like that in pretty much any network, sorry, any industry, but like in esports, it's obviously what we're talking about. And yeah, I mean, I've experienced it myself, and I am the kind of person who will just open my network up most of the time to just anyone, just just because it's just who I am, and I'd rather just see someone go forward. There are some people who I'm just like, no, go away, don't like you for whatever reason. It may be, or I know that they've been a bit of a backstabber, or a distasteful leech, because there's tasteful leeches and then there's distasteful leeches. And what I mean there is that the leeches that come in and they will like get into your network and like maybe be a bit upfront about it, and ask you for help or whatever it may be, and then there's those and then they'll give it back to you and like potentially help you out in the future as well, which is like a give and take, which I think is very healthy within the industry in a way. And then there's the untasteful ones who try to do their best to like climb up you, stand on your shoulders, and then just slowly push your head down into the ground and be like, yeah, this person doesn't exist, hire me instead for everything. And I mean, I have had that where I've suggested someone to cast for something else for this broadcaster, and then I found out that I was then kicked off another broadcast because they offered, I think, 1/4 of the rate that I was offering, and then they proceeded to do a terrible job on broadcast. So I was like, fine, make yourselves look like shit.
So undercutting is a very, very big thing in casting. I know I've seen it all over social media. I've spoken with you about it as well. What is it that kind of possesses people to try and undercut each other? I don't understand the mentality behind it.
It's about survival. I mean, the survival instinct of like, how do I get in there? How do I win something? And like undercutting is one of the ways, rather than just being able to show that you're better than the broadcasters. It's having to try and go for the undercut. And sometimes, like I think there's two ways on the undercutting side. There's natural undercutting where someone, they don't deserve as much of a rate because they haven't got as much experience as that current talent, but they may well be really good and could also potentially take that person's job. So instead of say like £500 a day, they offer 250 or whatever. That could be perfectly reasonable for that. It just might be that it gets viewed wrongly. Then there's those who on purposely target and go and find out what that person is going for, and they go forward and just go really low, even doing it for free. There's people who will do it for free, and then they don't realize how damaging that is for the industry and then for themselves. And a lot of people will be like, £500 for a day, that's crazy. It's not. In the broad sense, if you're doing it full time and that's your main income, you could be doing maybe 1 or 2 broadcasts a month. And so you could, if you only do 2 broadcasts at £500 a day for like 2 days a month, that's £1,000. That's nothing, like when that's actually your main income. And it's not that fact that you just go on that broadcast and you cast. Then you have to prepare for it, and most of the time, all the notes you use, I think you end up using like 20% of them, but the preparation you have to put into it is like 8 hours at least, like what I do anyway over the course of a week before the broadcast, and sometimes in chunks. So I think undercutting is very damaging. Sometimes it makes sense, and it isn't undercutting. It's just, unfortunately, this person isn't as experienced as you on a broadcast, and so they're offering less, and that's why broadcasters would go for it, because they're business and they want money.
So have you, like, for people that do often do the whole undercutting thing, they might not do it consciously. It might just be a case of, okay, well, if a tournament organizer is kind of telling me I'm charging too much, maybe if I lower my rate, they'd be more willing to kind of work with me. And then after that, I can kind of have more secured gigs with them. Is that also a thing that kind of happens?
Yeah, and like that's like normal part of the course. I mean, as Gump would know for like with EPIC.LAN and you as well, it's the fact that you don't have the same budget as like say Blast or anything. So I might go and ask, and like Free Fire for example, I asked them for a specific rate, and they're just like, oh, but we pay our Malaysian or like Singaporean casters 1/5 or like 1/16 of that per month, and it's like, okay, cool, but we're in a totally different area. Living cost is very different. My experience may well be more than a lot of theirs as well, and also specifically within English or whatever it may be. And sometimes there's a lot of the education that I have to do with them. Like once I broke it down into like, this is why I charge this much instead of like £50 a day or whatever. I charge a lot more, is because of X, Y, and Z, my experience, why I do up to that lead period, why I charge on that like per hour, and what you get out of it, and my dedication to it. And like they understand, but it might be that they just don't have the budget for that, and so you either have to move with it or they'll move away.
Okay, so how do you kind of work out what rate you should charge?
Very difficult question. I don't think there's a perfect one for it. Like I think most people end up like charging £50 a day for, like, if you take CSGO for example, like £50 a day for when you're first starting is pretty good, like pretty damn good, to be honest. And like for the most part, I did it free for the first year and something, because I was running my own like events and stuff for the most part, and yeah, couldn't really pay myself anything. I was in a negative flow of cash for that. But it's, yeah, I mean, it's one, you just have to talk to people like other commentators and stuff, and don't be so hesitant of being like, oh, what do you think I could charge for this? And I know me and you speak about it a lot, and I still like hesitate about it, because I'm like, well, it's hard for me to suggest for you sometimes, but you know, I've suggested some good numbers for you and what it could potentially work, and they have worked, and it's pushed you up to another potential level, which I think is great. And I think maybe that's a good sign, as to like sometimes, like, you know, just play your luck and be like, oh yeah, I charge X amount, even though you'd be happy with Y for that period of time. And it maybe look at it in the sense of like, okay, every 12 months, I need to increase my earnings by X amount, and just trying to work out that, okay, so I need to start charging more per day. Why can I charge more on that front? Because I do this amount of time. So if you've only got 6 months in like experience in commentating, you don't really deserve much. You do deserve some for your time, but when it comes to actual being really good in your field, you're most likely, like 99% of the time, you're not going to be there. So you need to try and make sure maybe you're covering your costs for your travel, your like some of the basic time, so you're at least getting like minimum wage or whatever for the hours worked. Although obviously on broadcast that can be a bit of a hard fetch when they go on for so long sometimes. And then just try and work it up steadily. So instead of like £50 that you've done for that first 6 months, whatever, double it. And then go from there and like work out, okay, so now I'm charging X amount per hour. How does that relate into like the actual earnings for someone, or what they would normally get anyway? And then also correlate that with the event you're doing, what someone might charge for, like say a Dota 2 like TI event. They're probably not going to charge the same for like a local like Dota 2 event.
And like, how do you kind of break it down? So like you mentioned speaking to other casters and asking for their input and their advice. Do you find that other casters are actually open and willing to discuss things like that? Because I know you mentioned the topic of undercutting kind of being a thing in the scene. So I'm not sure if someone kind of approached a caster and was like, hey, by the way, how much would you charge for this event? Or would that caster then be like, are they asking me because they're trying to undercut me, or like, what's the deal?
It's a bit of a difficult topic, because and it's like a very much a culture one as well, because sometimes people are just very much comfortable with talking about how much they earn and stuff like that, and they just don't care. That there is like, it is like different per culture, like per country and stuff. Like it is just, yeah, sometimes it is different. I try to be fairly open about it, but I do know, like, obviously plenty of UK people, British people who are just like closed off and like, you're asking how much I earn, how dare you, or whatever. And I think in the US it's a little bit different, where they are more open with just talking about that stuff, or have been in my experience. And it's also just being smart in the sense of like how you ask and who you ask. If you just go and message someone out of the blue that you don't know, who is a competitor of yours, commentator, doing the same sort of style as you, and you're trying to take their gigs, which is what you are doing. Be smart about it. Don't be stupid. Be like, oh yeah, how much do you charge usually? And they're like, well, I mean, you're trying to get in here, so I don't really want to tell you that. So at least try to ask your friends, and also try to ask, like, get in the DMs or whatever of someone who's closer to the top and ask for their experience. But that is also a bit of a difficult one, because what they charge now is very different to what you'd be earning, and also what they would have charged, which was zero back when they first started, is very different as well to the sort of time frame in which we're working, because we're obviously far into this industry now compared to what we were like even just 6 years ago when I started. Just like the whole scene is very different. And so yeah, it's I don't think it's like an easy one. You have to kind of just troll through it, take notes, work it out, speak to different people, work out what they kind of charge. And also, if you're really unsure, put in a number or ask them, what budget do you have for this? And more than likely, they'll say, oh, I have X budget, but their budget is actually like Y, and they'll try to skim off the top as much as they can, because it is what they have to do, or they know that they need that extra bit of budget to pay another caster more. And some people find that a bit annoying or awkward, because they're like, well, I should charge the same as the other person because I'm doing the same work as them, but you may not have the same experience. So it's sort of recognizing that as well and taking that into account.
Do you think that some of the issues around casters who may well be undercutting others, whether they know their own marketing value themselves? Because I only ask this because obviously one of the things me and Jasmine have spoken about recently is we'd like to do an episode on sort of marketing and brand value around players and everything like that. But there is an aspect to casters that have the same portfolio. So, you know, Twitter followers, for example, like Pansy has 77,000 Twitter followers. Sponge has 122,000 Twitter followers. So the reach of those different profiles is going to be widely different. I think that some of the issues of the casters who are up and coming perhaps don't work out how much, you know, their followers bring to the table currently.
Yeah, I think it's definitely something that has to be taken into account as well. That, I mean, like, yeah, one, you may try to overcharge and you don't have as much of a reach as someone else. You do need to keep that in account. Like, okay, what are you bringing to this broadcast? You're bringing your experience. You're bringing your, obviously, your actual talent and knowledge of the game, and then you're also like bringing in your actual potential fans or followers you have, which is just like, even like for me, even saying that is very weird to think of. And it's a bit of a difficult one to like even judge, because at the same time it's then diving into, okay, what is your actual engagement and crossover between like posting something on social media and then actually getting them there on the actual broadcast? Because you could have like 10 or 15 or 500,000 people and you may just get like 0.1% engagement rate, and they don't care about that specific thing, and they may not be there for you. It's like you show Sponge and Pansy. A lot of Sponge's fans originally were of him as an actual player. And then when he switched into being an analyst, it took him a while to work it up. I mean, he fairly quickly shot up into the spotlight because he did an absolutely amazing job and is one of the best, or maybe the best analyst we have in CSGO. And with Pansy, I mean, she comes from like a lot of experience in commentary across like Call of Duty and CSGO and Valorant now and like PUBG and a few other bits. And she may only have like 50,000, but that could easily be highly engaged 50,000 across it. So I mean, bringing it back to the original point, I don't really know how you would exactly charge, like how much you would charge based off that. I've never really taken that into too much consideration because, one, I don't have a big following. I mean, compared to like I guess a lot of the people who are coming into the industry and stuff, I do have like 10 times some of their followers, but that's still just like very little comparably.
Yeah.
So, do tournament organizers, when they're hiring casters and stuff, actually ask about social engagements and followers and things like that as well?
No. I don't.
Okay.
I mean, I've not had it once, but that could also be because they've looked at my profile and were like, it's not worth it us even bothering asking this. I don't know if I've been turned down any time because of that. I've never had that specific feedback. Be that because they didn't want to give me that feedback, or two, just because it wasn't actually the actual fact. Didn't take like it wasn't relevant. I think it just differs. Like for some events, it'll change it up. I mean, if you go back to like your comparison of bringing someone from Fortnite into like doing CS:GO or anything, if we look at the fact that there's a lot of I guess influencers or someone or people who have absolutely zero experience being an actual commentator, and they get brought on stage and they do these commentaries or hosting or something, and they're just dreadful, but their followers are there and they get that engagement, and it's frustrating to see that happen because I'm just like, well, they definitely don't, in my opinion, deserve to be there on that broadcast, because like to me, it's obviously like the seat where we get to do the stuff we love on like commentating. It's kind of like, you know, a bit of a dishonest, like not dishonest, like what do you call it? Like disregard, I guess, to the actual skill set it takes to be able to actually do a good job of commentating, and they just sit there and they're just and and they don't pay too much attention. It's not like they're going to go and improve because they may not feel they need to. So, and that's, I guess, coming into it where they were probably put there because of their following, or they were put there because of that following, rather than an actual skill set they have.
Okay, and I feel like a lot of people possibly don't understand or acknowledge or kind of know how important it is to brand yourself and represent yourself in a professional manner. Like, I feel like at all times, esports is very much an industry where people talk a lot at that, and kind of like all it takes is for one Twitch clip from years ago, or, you know, just something that you have said years ago to kind of resurface. And that, in my opinion, can have a lot of influence over your current career and your current path in the industry. And I think it is very important for people to kind of understand that it's not just about, you know, how you are when you're casting or anything like that. A lot of it is also, like you mentioned previously, networking and how you kind of brand yourself. So we spoke at the very start about how you kind of changed over from Wee Freeman to Tom Pickering. And I know one of the conversations that we had when you did that ages ago was, it's just more professional. It's just a lot easier to be known as Tom Pickering, which is who I am, versus this name, this like alias to be known by. So if you got any kind of tips or advice for people who do want to kind of get into the casting scene and maybe shine some light on the fact that, you know, I'm not kind of just chatting and don't actually know what I'm saying, and that, you know, how you represent yourself on social media, on stream, on like at LAN events, when you're socializing with people, all of that does actually weigh in a lot on how people kind of view you in a professional manner.
Yeah, it does, and like it's one of the more difficult things when it actually comes to mental health and stuff as well, is that you have to be aware that you're being watched all the time across social media. Anything you do can have a ripple effect, like the butterfly effect. If I go and I drop like a, I don't know, like, which I would clearly never do, but go and drop like a homophobic slur or something on Instagram in like a story, like that's like, as far as I should be concerned, that's there forever. When you put something on the internet, as far as you know, it's somewhere there. Someone's got a recording of it. It is there. And so you have to be extraordinarily careful where and how you represent yourself, even if it is at an offline event and there isn't a recording of it. Because if a single person hears it or sees it or whatever and passes that on, then you're going to be screwed. And I know multiple times where there's been like someone who's been on broadcast, and whereas it might be all right in their culture to make that kind of joke or reference, like in a worldwide stage, which is what you are on when you're on a broadcast, it's not okay. And I think that, like, one person I'm thinking of is only just recovering from that, and I think that was like 2-3 years ago, and even then they're still not getting anything big. because it is known that they're a bit of a risk, that they might say something adverse or do something risky. So why should a broadcaster take that risk on you? Like, and I completely agree with it. I think it's perfectly fine. You have to keep an eye on what you're doing. And when it comes to like my name and stuff as well, I mean, I came up with that name. It's a reference to Terry Pratchett's Discworld series and a set of like people within that. And it should have been We Free Man technically, but I did We Free Men just because like my dyslexic. I was like decided that was cool, and that's went with. And stuck with it, and it was always getting it was always annoying when people would like say We Free Man instead of We Free Men, and it would, you know, annoy me, and as well as it was just awkward to say on like on broadcast of like We Free Men. So I think it's something you should take into consideration of like, okay, how does my name come into the flow of it? Do I need to change that? Is there shorthand for it? How can I position that as a brand? Is it going to be an issue? I mean, if you look at Jay, for example, Eternal J, he used to be called Flip Switch. Was it
Switchblade?
Switchblade, yeah, Switchblade J. And I know that can be an issue if you have like, say, if I was called like 420 Tom Blaze It headshot whatever, like anything like that, then causes me a risk to be on like broadcast. Like they don't want potentially that to be below your name. If it's going to be televised, if it's going to be just to a younger audience, whatever it is. So they're just like, nah, like change your name or whatever. So I think it's always important to take that into consideration. What was really good and cool and fun or whatever on like Call of Duty 20 years ago or whatever, just, you know, change it. You need to try and give a professional outlook on yourself. And I think in my perspective, like why I changed my name is because I do multiple different things within esports and sort of business in general, and I want to get my name out there and just it to be recognizable rather than a username, which, yeah, I mean, no one else is going to use or has used, but it just felt a lot more comfortable and a little bit more easier to position as my brand. And I think, yeah, it's really important to have that sort of conversation with any of your friends who do any marketing or anything. Just even if they're not experts or anything, just ask them what their thoughts are on your name or like your graphics and just social media, everything on that front.
I know I've had a bunch of mates kind of ask me about the social media side of things, and a lot of the time I'm like, please do, like, let's say for example, if they're like really annoyed at something, or you know, they're kind of just ranting and they're kind of saying in voice chat, oh, you know what, I'm going to tweet about it. I'm like, please don't, please do not. That's like every social media manager's absolute nightmare. Like, all right, calm down, deep breaths. Let's not do anything harsh now. But yeah, I do agree. I think it is incredibly important to work on your personal branding. And that extends far beyond than, you know, your alias or your logo. I would say the majority of that is how people identify you, what people kind of know you for, right? I'm pretty sure most people would say that they know me for loving ice cream. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. I think people want to be able to identify with who you are as a person a lot more than they want to with a logo. Because let's be honest, at the end of the day, it's your personality that's going to be on broadcast and on screen, and not so much your logo.
Yeah, it's important to know as well that it may not be the tournament organizer that has an issue with you. It can be the actual game developer, as I sort of mentioned before. But like, that comes from social media. And my example for that is with like Riot, for example. I've gone on social media and talked shit about them and been like, yeah, this isn't okay with what they're doing. And I could be 100% correct with what I'm saying. It doesn't matter, because as far as like I'm concerned, is that they would never want me to work on anything they've done, because there's a history there. Even if I go and delete it now or whatever, that they know that I've looked down and talked down on them, and they're like, okay, well, screw this guy. Even if he is really good and he makes sense, he was talking down on our brand. And yeah, it may not be fair, but life's not fair. Like I knew when I was going and tweeting that stuff that, yeah, I'll probably never work on a Riot title in my life. I'm fine with that. But you have to take responsibility for the actions you do online and realize that, yeah, just be careful. Like, it's so hard. I mean, you're basically surveyed like the whole time.
Yeah,
I've said it before and I'll say it again. Social media is both the blessing and the curse of the 21st century.
I do not like it.
I do think a lot of it as well, a lot of people might not know this, that if you are trying to get a gig with a tournament organizer or with a company, with Riot, for example, when they ask you to do a gig, they will ask for your username in that game. And what they do is they run checks on your account. They run checks on your chat logs. They run checks on your bans. So it does extend far beyond than just, someone having a clip of what you've said, or someone on social media mentioning it, or someone at a LAN event mentioning it. It is very much like, at the end of the day, it's completely understandable because you are representing their brand. And if all it takes is one person to see you on broadcast and be like, hold on a second, this person was trash talking me in a game and they were saying X, Y, and Z to me, like, that looks bad on Riot. So it's important for people to kind of understand that it does extend far beyond than what you do IRL. It is also what you do online. And, if you do have bans for, whatever slurs you might have said and things like that, that will impact you in the long run. It may not seem or feel like it does right now, but I think in the long term, I think a lot of players can definitely learn from this as well. Because, Gump, you can back me up on this. The fact that we've been sat on HLSW reading the chat logs from games when players are playing in CS, it's honestly shocking, some of the stuff that they say. So this extends far beyond than just casters and stuff like that. It also applies to players a lot of the time. Please just yeah.
I for PUBG, I ran one of the biggest for a while, NA discords within PUBG, and like some of the now pro players within that, like I think I've got chat logs of them dropping like the N word and being like fairly racist and stuff. But luckily for them, I keep in mind that they were at the time 14, 15, and I gave them hell for it, and they got banned, and like I spoke to them about it. And if they do something else, maybe I'll bring it up. But I also think to a point that I don't want to go and screw them on that, because like maybe they have like developed. If they show the same things, then yeah, it's going to be obviously a recurring theme. But yeah, like some of the stuff people say, you'd be very surprised. Like it's crazy. Like yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a few stories to tell when it comes to social media. Probably best not to talk about those stories on a live podcast. But it certainly is. Social media and what you say in games is kind of reflective of your personality, and I think a lot of people, what they're starting to realize now. Hopefully they're starting to realize now, because of the big campaigns around the abuse that we're seeing online, that people are starting to realize that you've got to take responsibility for your actions online, like you would if you were in face to face with people. Like if you're going to be aggressive with someone, then expect yourself to get punched in the face. Well, that's exactly the same. And when it comes to social media at the moment, is if you're going to be abusive to someone, expect someone just to take a jab at you. It's gonna happen, and some people do need to be careful with that kind of thing. Which actually brings me on to my sort of next question for you, Tom, because obviously we've briefly spoken about it in the podcast so far about the mental health aspect of being a caster. You spoke about dealing with the comments and feedback from Reddit. The one thing I'd like to ask you is how do you deal with those kind of people? Obviously you want the feedback to come, fast and thick and fast from a lot of people, and get a different sort of variety of sort of feedback from tournament organizers to Reddit to social media. But how do you deal with the sort of the more negative comments, the ones that are kind of, you're really crap at casting, get out, that kind of, go, that kind of thing, the negative, the nasty comments? How does that really affect you as a person when you're casting? Like, even if you're at a big event, for example, if you've seen a couple of comments on social media about, oh, this guy's really crap at casting this game, You know, how do you deal with that? How do you block that out of your mind?
The most simplest answer is don't look, and avoid it as much as you can, which is incredibly difficult to do. But I mean, there's a number of ways of being able to limit that, your exposure to that, and I think it really comes into, I guess, some comments and I guess advice for people in general as commentators is that don't look at the Twitch chat. If you're solo casting, I think it's slightly different. For smaller stuff, like it depends on what the broadcast is. If I'm solo casting or have done, I may well look at the chat, depending on what the broadcaster wants. But quite often, it can actually quite in a different style of dynamic where you actually interact with the chat sometimes, which can create a bit of an interesting one. But you have to be a bit careful on that. But overall, like one of the biggest piece of advice that I've tried to follow, which is very hard because it's a bad habit that people get into, is watching or checking out Twitch chat whilst you're live. And like for me, I was casting WSG. Like I think this was my first gig that I think had like I think 200,000 people on or something watching, and I was bricking it. And I kept on occasionally looking at the viewers, and that's as bad as looking at the actual chat, because you're getting yourself into a mental state where it's like, oh wow, this is like the pressure's on, which yeah, it is, but you also have to try and chill down. And then I looked at some of the comments, and they were negative about myself, and also my more so about my like co-commentator at that time. And if I read those comments about him or something, I might be off put, or about myself, and I like, okay, I need to try and change that on broadcast, which never really tends to work well on the most part. So for me, it's that don't look at the broadcast chat. Just like don't need to look at it, and don't look at the numbers. You can look at them afterwards, and that's what matters. Looking at it live is actually just going to be toxic, and I still do it to this day. I think I'm at a place where I can deal with it perfectly fine. And the comments and stuff, I feel like I do a good enough job that any of the comments I do get just bounce off me. But that's not always the case. It really depends on where my mental is at that point. And then when it comes to social media during an event, know what you're going to be posting in regards to when you're going live. Maybe some like Instagram posts and stuff, but don't look through the comments, or don't go to Reddit at all. On the most part, like just don't go to Reddit unless you're specifically posting your demo there to get some harsh and over the top comments back potentially, or over the top positive ones as well. It can go either way. And so just in general, just like stick away from social media as much as you can, apart from like planned posts to advertise and push yourself out there, so that other broadcasters and other talent can see that you're at that event and advertising and marketing yourself. There's no real reason to go looking for those comments during it. You can ask for feedback from your fellow commentator next to you. They're more than likely to give you feedback. If they don't, then they're doing a bad job themselves, because they're supposed to be doing the best job of their ability for it. And part of that is actually supporting the people you work with and trying to lift them up and do the best show you can, because that's what you're being paid for. And also, I guess, production and stuff. But to be honest, I've never had an easy time asking them. They tend to just like, oh yeah, you're doing a good job. And I'm like, I feel like I was doing a really bad job, and I have like X, Y, and Z I can improve in. It would have been nice to hear that verbally recognized by you, but guess you don't. Like, they don't want that confrontation. They just want to sit in the production room. They just want to do their job and get over it, because they know they've got a long day ahead. So just making sure that you get into the right mind frame of like, okay, Twitch commentator, like Twitch chatters don't really know what they're talking about on the most part. Redditors don't. People in the comment section on Twitter, they don't know what they're talking about as well. You can go back and look at it after the event, but just you have to be a bit careful and put on like a bit of like a shield and go through the comments and, you know, like fighting off the bad ones and looking for the ones that might have some constructive criticism on. But on the most part, it's not going to be good for your mental health.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting, really. Because, like you said, it is very difficult to sort of sit there and sort of, you know, not look at the negative feedback, because, you know, the temptation's there. The temptation is to look at Reddit and go, you know, oh my God, I'm really bad at this. I should really give up. And you know, I think sometimes, you know, a lot of people forget how, I don't know, how casters and even to some degree, like, you know, the celebrities in the world, you know, some people just forget that these people are human as well. Like, we all have this, human need to be loved and cared for and things like that. But we also, don't want to be told how bad we are. And sometimes it's really, really difficult. Is there any particular sort of dark moments of your casting career that you feel comfortable about talking about? Is there any areas of like any bad event, like really bad events that you couldn't breathe at, for example?
There's one, isn't there, Jazz? I suppose. Yeah. I mean, like, yeah. So it wasn't much of an event or broadcast. So this was, when was this? 2016 or 17? It was like during an absolute heat wave in like June or July, during one of these years. And this is when I was working full time still in recruitment, doing a whole 8-hour day. Our AC in the office hadn't worked and it was absolutely boiling. And then had to travel to Basingstoke to go to Multiply's office to cast on Insomnia. Not Insomnia, sorry, what is it called? The CSGO Masters. Yeah.
Yeah, UK Masters.
UK Masters, that was it. And the 2 trains I took had the windows locked shut and they had the heating on. So I was like sweating. And so I got on the bus with Jazz, and she had like a nice cold drink or whatever. I'm like, I hate you right now. We got to the studio and there was no aircon in this tiny little studio in their office building or whatever. It just happened to be broken on like one of the hottest days of the year. So they had one fan to like try and push the heat from a single door that was a courtyard with no wind or anything in it. And so basically we got into production. I was feeling fine, wearing a suit and shirt and stuff. And then, just got incredibly hot over the time, and I was talking a lot through it. I felt like I was having to try and do a lot of commentary due to potentially discomfort for my co-commentator or whatever at the time. And then, I can't even remember how long into it was, like an hour or hour and a half or whatever. I passed out. Not on camera, fortunately, but on broadcast during a game of Inferno or whatever. And obviously I passed out, smacked my head and fell down. And like, I just remember coming to, and I think I felt like I was going to like knock someone out because I was like so angry, because it's like, it was the first time I'd ever passed out from anything. And it was from like heat stroke and just general just self-exhaustion. And so I like came to, and like, I could already tell it was like, I've messed up here, and it was absolutely horrible, and felt like I was like obviously like failed everything, and failed obviously the contract I was doing. And so like that's definitely like an unusual worst situation for me, but like that definitely affected my confidence in a lot of ways. But like luckily I didn't like allow that to like stay on top of me. I worked past it. I think fairly quickly. It still, I guess, has haunted me for a while, and like talking about it, and I don't think I've ever sort of mentioned it like publicly or anything like that. And like kindly, like Veracity, Jazz hasn't done it either, or across anything. But like it's something I do like think about and like laugh about sometimes as well, and try to think about how I could have avoided it. And it's very hard because it was just a lot of like unfortunate situations when it comes to like no AC and just overheating and stuff. That I don't think I could have done anything apart from just not be on that broadcast at that specific time. So, yeah.
I think one thing that definitely stood out to me, because I was there when it happened, was firstly, we were freaking out when it happened. Like, everybody's like terrified because of firstly your health and your safety. And when you kind of woke up, you were obviously disorientated, but also like the first thing you've kind of said to me is that I've messed up this opportunity. Like, no thought for even what's happened to you or what could have caused it or if you're going to be okay. It was very much I've messed up this opportunity. And I think that should definitely be something that people should kind of take away from this, is that no matter what happens in the industry, you always should put your health first. And, you know, 100%. I have reiterated this over and over again. And I think it's definitely something, Tom, that you have learned from, because being in this industry, you kind of learn, like Jason kind of said to us, a lot of people in this industry are just temporary, right? Like when they're done rinsing you and using you and squeezing you for everything that you're kind of worth and run you to the ground, then you're just going to get replaced with someone else. So I think making sure that you take care of your mental health as well as your physical health should always be #1 priority.
Yeah, and that really sort of hit me quite hard in 2018. In a kind of a weird scenario I ended up being in. So I'd been working full-time in recruitment for about 4 years at this point. And I was working my day job like 8 to like 10 hours a day, plus then trying to do commentary and stuff. And I was running JGL for 9 months every single Friday, and then eventually every single Saturday as well. Loved it, but I was funding it with the very little salary I had. I was underpaid, and my boss wasn't paying me like my commission for what I was earning, instead spending it on booze and other stuff during the time, and sometimes some stuff I can't go into just because of legal reasons. And I was very much just working chaotically to try and get anywhere and to be able to earn anything, and not really knowing exactly what I was doing apart from just working like sometimes like 16-hour days a week, just to the point of absolute exhaustion mentally and physically, and just having no money or spare time to go and do anything else. No social life, wasn't working out, or I was yo-yoing all the time of like, okay, I'm going to work out this day and like, you know, go for a walk or something. And then others like for like a couple of months just do absolutely nothing. And it's an easy routine to fall into, and forget that like physical exercise is so important to your mental health in a lot of ways. In even if it's just minor stuff, just every day or at least a couple of times a week, to be able to go and do that. And for me, towards the end of 2017, I was offered a job to go over to Malta and do full-time commentary and work as like a consultant for this company within esports and tournament organization for them. That company is now socios.com, and it has nothing to do with commentary or tournament organization, because it just switched on its axes on like what we were doing. But that was fairly apparent to me like fairly early on in 2018, and I did some like streaming, but otherwise I kind of just like backed off and just enjoyed the fact that I was being paid to do this job where I was still able to sort of relax in a Mediterranean country and just be able to relax and like play games and stuff and not put too much stress on. I'd also just come out of like a relationship as well, like going into 2018, which ended like fairly badly on my end anyway. And so I kind of took that whole year to just kind of relax, up until towards like halfway through it, where I pushed more into it. And I was still doing esports stuff, and I was pushing on that and making connections and doing some like minor broadcast stuff here and there. But I just kind of let myself, I guess, live without having to be like, oh, this is what I'm doing for 8 hours and then I'm doing another 8 hours. And that really just helps me realign on my mental health side. I mean, I've been suffering from depression for, I guess, 16 years now, since I was about 10. Well, I had actually like tried to kill myself when I was 10 years old, and I'm fairly open like about it and stuff. And I've always suffered from depression, and it sort of runs in my family. But and it's really important, especially if you do have previous like conditions and stuff, to note that like esports is a very difficult industry to work in, and you're going to be expected to work long hours for very, very little sometimes, or for free. And you have to know that sometimes like what your own limits are, and to be able to back away from that and realize it is not worth taking those risks on yourself. And if you are to try and at least, you know, try to manage them and talk to them about people and not just back up into a corner, which I know a lot of people in this industry do, and I have spoken to people about it. And I think just openly talking about this stuff is really good, because especially for commentators and stuff, well, not especially, but for commentators as well, is the fact that we obviously have to feel the stress of insecurities of like, am I good enough for this broadcast? Who's going to be trying to take my job? Am I going to be able to pay the bills? How many events do I need to do to be able to actually do this full time? Which is one of the reasons why people are doing undercutting, which is a bad way of looking at it, but that's just from a bad education point of view for them. And there's just like a lot of different remits that go into it. The pressure from broadcasters to lower your rates, to do more work, to be better, to improve, the negative comments across social media and stuff for people who don't view you as an actual person. They view you as that person they shit talk on Call of Duty at night or something, where they'll tell you that they've met up with your mother and stuff, and like, but in worse circumstances. And a lot of people can't filter that out, and they don't have that kind of armor to be like, yeah, these are just idiots, just like spouting stuff off, because they don't even view me as a human. And that can really get to people. So it's really making sure you take stock of that and just reflect on your year and what you've done and what you're looking to achieve, as well as, is this like worth it to me to go through all this? And if you're in a bad situation, how can you get out of it? And don't be afraid to speak to other people about it.
I feel like you've already answered my next question, which was going to be what kind of, what would be the big advice you would give to any newcomers, and would you do anything different with your own career, especially if from what you know now to what you knew then, would there have been anything you would have done differently?
I don't think so. I mean, like, obviously, if I had the experience now that I had back then, I'd do things a lot better and I'd be a lot further along. But I mean, necessarily, I think, especially where it was at the time, the only way for me to be able to get out and get actual experience was doing a lot and doing it myself, which is why I like made the organization JGL back in the day, was because there was no other way for me to be able to get experience, to be able to do anything in a way that I felt was relevant. And that worked for me, but it was also very unhealthy. So it's a very difficult topic to comment on, because in one sense, I think that's what helped shape me and like be able to like mold me to be able to know like, okay, I can work really hard. But at the same time, I know that had a negative effect on my mental health. So it's a bit of a tricky balance. I would stay with it just because I've come out on the other side and I have that like in hindsight of like, I'm where I am and I'm happy with where I've got to. Yeah, I don't know. It's a bit of a difficult one, I guess.
Okay. Jasmine, do you have any sort of final questions that you'd like to ask Tom?
I think you've pretty much answered all of my questions. I'll tell you exactly what's going to happen. We're going to finish this show, and then something's going to come to mind, and I'm going to pick your brains about it again. But for now, I think you've given us loads of really good insight, loads of really good advice, and thank you so much for being so open and honest with your experiences, and obviously for talking about the mental health side of things. I think the more we kind of discuss and openly speak about these things, the more we can kind of normalize, telling people if you're struggling, getting help when you need it, and, everything that kind of comes with it, especially when you're working in an industry like esports, where it's so, I don't know, I feel like people don't talk about it enough. Exactly.
Yeah, I think just like a really important point though to make, and I don't think this gets talked about at all within when we talk about mental health, is that yes, you should talk to other people and you should try and speak to your friends and stuff, but you should also recognize that yes, you can talk to them, but they're not equipped with the skill set to be able to deal with your issues. And it's one of the biggest things I talked to a therapist previously about, is that I always took on the baggage of others and talked to them about their issues. And they were like, that's really, really unhealthy and very dangerous for you and them. Because like at the end of the day, I was like, okay, well, what makes it different for you? And this therapist was like, well, I'm trained to be able to disengage at the end of this conversation, to then not care about it so much and to be able to just treat you as obviously a patient. And I obviously still care, but I know how to be able to step away from this conversation and not walk away with it. Whereas for me, I was going through all my friends' baggage and I was dragging that along with me. So just be very careful on trying to take all your friends' baggage as well. Try to help direct them and talk to them, but realize that unless you're professionally trained, you need to be able to try and point them in the direction of someone who is, because it is a lot for you to be able to take. And even if you don't recognize it and you're like, oh, I'm really strong, I'm really emotionally involved and stuff, doesn't matter. It's still going to have some form of negative impact on you, and you may end up in that situation instead, and you may feel a bit lost as to, oh, everyone depends on me. I'm the person that people go to. I can't really go and depend on this other person because they've got an issue. So just be very careful on being the person that people depend on, because like me, you might find yourself in a rut where you have no one you can potentially talk to about it.
Yep. I feel like you're my spirit animal, Tom.
That's why we're both called Tom.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like that is the you've accurately described how I feel and how I've felt for last year during the pandemic, where everyone's been suffering and I've been helping multiple people sort out their lives. It's just one of those difficult things you have to take on. Sorry, yeah.
I was going to say, I don't think it is something you just have to take on, mate. I think you definitely need to make sure you're looking after yourself on it as well. And that, yes, other people's mental health is important, but at the same time, you need to look out for number one. Even if that, in the sense of, okay, I need to tell this person that they need to speak to someone, or go and speak to someone yourself if you need to be able to work out how to potentially relay that back to them in a way that's healthy and isn't going to put them in danger. And that's kind of what I had to do myself. But don't just gloss over that, Tom. You got to make sure you look after yourself, mate.
Yeah. I feel like we've had a bit of a session now, guys.
I'm going to go cry.
It's a bit of a therapy session here. Oh, what's this turned into? Okay, Tom. Any sort of shout-outs or anything you'd like to say finally before we wrap up?
Not really. Apart from if you do ever need anything, my DMs are pretty much always open. I may not respond immediately, but I'm always happy to help you with anything. Be it sort of mental health issues or anything else like that. I'll point you in the right direction, or at least try to. Or if it's to do with the industry side as well, just let me know. I'm fairly open with my network, like I mentioned, as long as you don't look like you've been an absolute arse to everyone else. In which case, I don't reward that behavior. So yeah, just come forward, speak, and learn to network. I think that's one of the main things you can take away from this.
Yep. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Tom, for your time tonight to come on the show. It's been quite the sort of revelation about the casting side of the industry. I certainly have learned a few new things tonight. What about you, Jasmine?
Yeah, definitely. I think, if anything, it's kind of, I don't know, I feel like I've got this urge to just make sure that people aren't so, closed off with, people trying to come into the industry and thinking that people are all trying to steal each other's jobs. I think it should be more inclusive. It should be more, if you're asking people for feedback, obviously when and if you have time, be very open with that. But I didn't really think it would be as backstabby as it kind of is, because the weird thing is on social media, everyone's always like, oh, hey, really great job, man. Hey, well done. You did really well. But then behind closed doors, you have no idea what people are saying to TOs about you. So I think, I don't know, hopefully that changes. Hopefully. But I feel like I'm living in a fantasy world where I want everyone to just be happy and rainbows and smiles everywhere. So
ice cream.
That too.
Definitely ice cream. Thank you, Tom, anyway, for your time. Obviously, we have one more episode, which will be next week ahead of Epic 33. There are still online tickets for Epic 33 where you can sign up for the CSGO, Valorant, or StarCraft 2 tournaments at the event. And of course, you can play from the comfort of your own home, because obviously all of this is an online tournament. There are going to be at least 80 participants who will be sitting in Coventry at the Doubletree Hilton Hotel. So it should be quite fun for those people who will be at the events. And it's a slow road back to the normality of events, finally, which is a great sign to see. We also have a second EPIC.LAN event, which is the Tabletop Edition, which also takes place at the Doubletree Hilton Hotel in Coventry. That is on the 27th to the 29th of August. So you can grab your tickets on the website at epiclan.co.uk. And finally, Jasmine's going to go through the giveaway once again because she's so good at this. So,
well, thanks to the fantastic people over from Blue, you guys at home and you listeners can be in with a chance of winning a Yeti Caster bundle. So do make sure that you head on over to epiclan.uk/blue to enter that and be in with a chance of winning one of these fantastic microphones. Smash that, didn't I?
That was actually brilliant. Thank you, Jasmine.
Thanks.
Yes, so that is PhoenixUK presented by Blue. We will be back next time, and I'm sure we'll talk about some more hard-hitting topics for you to be tuning in on a Friday night once again. And, thank you guys.
Thanks for tuning in. Be kind to one another.